All right, y'all, looks like we're not waiting on anyone else, so I'm going to go ahead and start off our introductions. My name is Holly Mays. I use she, they pronouns, and I work for the Department of Associated Students as the Assistant Director of Governmental Affairs. And I would like to introduce our facilitators, Anjum Fitch and Cindy Lopez. They are going to be presenting today on the university budget and the financial policies and procedures. So please join me in welcoming them.
Hello, hi. Can everyone hear me right? I'm having connectivity issues, so sorry if you can't hear me. I'm Anjum Fitch. I'm the Assistant Director of Budget and Finance at Associated Students. I will be presenting a part of the Authorized Signers workshop. And before I do that, I'm going to give Cindy a chance to introduce herself because she's going to present the second part of the budget policies.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having us here. I'm Cindy Lopez. I'm the outgoing Assistant Director for Budget and Finance. I have retired, but have come back on recall to help train Anjum more so and to work on special projects and provide support as AS moves from a remote environment that we've been in for the last year and a half back to on campus. Because that does take a little, it is a little different coming back.
Holly, I was actually going to share my screen, but give me a second. I'm just trying to get this thing going. It's just, can I share screen, Holly?
Yes, I just took a look at the settings. Are you able to now?
Yes, I am.
Perfect.
And it may get stuck, like I say. Internet is a little shaky at my place. So let me know if you can see what I'm trying to show you. Can you see the Authorized Signers workshop?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Give me one more second. I have the dreaded circle, as they say. So to start, to becoming an authorized signer, there are a few things you need to know. The majority of our money, that's the AS funds, the budget is funded by student fees. These are fees that are paid by students every quarter to our association. So anything that we spend needs to be appropriate since they're spent for students' fees. The financial structure for associate students is we are not state funded, we're nonprofit, and we are student funded. We get $211.59 per student every fall, winter, and spring. And every student in the summer contributes $183.79. Associated Students does not fund any organization whose membership is contingent upon gender, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, fellowship, GPA, faith, ideological beliefs, talent, athletic, or mental prowess. We also don't fund gifts, gift cards, prizes, personal items, awards, or scholarship. Last year was an exception where FNB had approved gift cards as an exception policy, but they haven't approved anything so far. We remain to see what happens this year. If there is a time when you want to use a gift card, you will need to ask for permission since, like I said, it is an exception to the policy. The AS Associated Students undergoes an extensive external audit process where we hire outside auditors and they come audit our books. Most of what I'm telling you comes from the AS Financial Policies and Procedures. This can be found on the AS website under governing documents along with the legal code. So if you ever need to refer back or get mixed up, please refer to that. It's a longer document. So I'm just going to shorten it a lot, give you a brief synopsis, but that's always a resource for you. And that's the link. Like I said, it's on the AS main page under the documents. And now we're going to start on the authorized sign-up process. So what is an authorized sign-up? In order to be an authorized signer, you need to attend a virtual workshop, which you're doing right now. And after that, you're going to enter your information on the authorized sign-up portal. I will send that in an email to all of you. If you're an authorized signer for multiple groups, you will need to complete an entry for each entity for which you're an authorized signer on the portal. So say you're going to be signing off for Global Gauchos and some other group, you will make an entry for both the groups. After that, you're going to complete and mail in your signature forms. At this point, we're unable to accept digital signatures on the authorized form or scans of the form. We need to have the form with your wet signature on file. It's kind of like a signature card that the bank keeps. We do manage a lot of money and we need to have the original signatures on file. What does it mean to be an authorized signer? So you will be signing off requisitions, you will be asking for funding, but for a requisition to be processed, an organization must have at least 2 different authorized signers sign off on the form. If you are signing off on a requisition made payable to yourself, you cannot sign up on that. So technically we ask every organization to have at least 3 authorized signers. So, people can sign off on requisitions that are made payable to yourself. When filling out or approving a requisition, it is your responsibility to ask yourself, is the expenditure appropriate? Read the requisition, ask questions. Make sure all documentation is complete before submitting the requisition. Also ask yourself, has it been approved? All requisitions must be signed by 2 signers, as I said. A person whom the check is being made out to cannot sign the requisition as an authorized signer themselves. Also ask yourself, does the expenditure fit with the mission? Does it include all the supporting documents? And has it been approved with the organization? One more thing, you also need to complete the authorized sign-up process each fiscal year. A lot of people think it's the calendar year. So the process goes from the 1st of July to the 30th of June of the following year. And every year you must be authorized again. Also ask yourself, does it follow AS or university policies? Anything you sign, be sure when you sign anything, you look closely at the requisition, double check the backup, and make sure you understand why it's being done. Feel free to ask questions. You should not be really signing anything that you don't fully understand, because if we have questions, we reach out to the authorized signers. So if there's anything incomplete, we will reach out to you. Like I said, if when becoming an authorized signer, you will attend the workshop and you enter your information on that portal. This link is up there. And I will send all this information out to you in an email once we finish this workshop. Moving on to contracts, speaker fees. If you're going to be hiring a contract or you're doing a contract or a speaker, your requisitions must be turned into AS admin with a signed performance contract. All performance contracts must have a performance contract number. And you can start this process by contacting your advisor. They should be able to guide you who you need to contact, what's the next step in it. All contracts must also have the signature of the Associated Students Executive Director before any payment can be made. So sometimes in the past, we have had student groups pay the performer directly and then seek reimbursement. This is not reimbursable. It is strictly forbidden. We will not be able to reimburse you if you pay the performer directly. It has to go through the whole contracts procedures, so please refrain from paying the speaker directly. We also need a W-9 for all independent contractors, or if it's an international contractor, we've had a few last year, we need a W-8BEN form. And if you have questions about that, feel free to email Cindy or me, and I'd be happy to help you with that. In summary, the documentation made payable to a speaker must include the requisition. So we will need information about the event, when it was held. We'll also need the performance contract, which is dated, signed, and initialed by the performer, as well as the W-9 with the performer's tax information and signature. It is also very important that you submit the completed paperwork a minimum of 2 weeks prior to the event. Checks will be paid to the speaker entertainer the day of the event or mailed after the day of the event. We cannot pay them before the event. Going on to sustainable purchasing. Certified compostable single-use food service products, including plates, bowls, utensils, and napkins, must be purchased for events and guests. No single-use water bottles may be purchased. 5-gallon jug pumps must be used for event hydration stations. And all public events with more than 30 attendees that provide food must have vegetarian and vegan options. And then more information can be found at sustainability.as.ucsb.edu. T-shirts are for awareness campaigns only and must be from sweat-free shops. Funds cannot be expended for gifts, parties, entertainment, awards, scholarships, trophies, or personal material without prior approval of the Finance and Business Committee. We go to travel. We didn't have any travel last year, not much, which was understandable because of the pandemic. But if you are going to be traveling, all travel costs must be accounted for with original itemized receipts stating exactly what was purchased. Receipts must be turned in 1 week after returning from travel. We will not fund travel for personal or social expenses. All travel must be approved by Finance and Business, but the staff and execs only need the AS Executive Director's approval. Coming on to the requisition process. Anytime you spend money within the organization, you must fill in a requisition form. Things don't just happen. Even if you call up transportation services and request a vehicle, you can get the vehicle, but you can't get the vehicle paid for unless you fill out a requisition form and the accompanying paperwork. So let's look at the requisition form, which can be found at that link. It's on the AS website on the main page under Finance. There are 3 different types of requisitions: checks, purchase orders, and journal entries. And you can find a lot of detailed information on the back of the form, including directions on how to complete the form. Checks, they're used for reimbursements. So you spend money on something and you want to be reimbursed, you submit a requisition. You need to attach original itemized receipts or invoices. You can't scan the picture photocopies. However, most of the times you get a digital copy. That's fine if you attach it with it. But if you got a paper copy, say if you went to Costco and you bought something, we would need that original itemized receipt or copy. And we also need meeting minutes where the funds were approved with the appropriate sections highlighted. So the itemized copies is an audit requirement which comes from an auditing firm. When you fill out the requisition form, tell us who is the check payable to, what it is for, description. The more clarity, the more descriptive your description is, I'm sorry for that, it helps us process it faster. Currently, we are mailing all checks, but we're considering going back to where you can pick it up at the ticket office. A purchase order. This is in a sense a promise to pay. It's almost like when you do not want to pay upfront. Example, if you went to a vendor and you want to order t-shirts from a company and they ask for a PO. So it's kind of a promise to pay them. Often they will start the manufacturing of the order only after you pay them. But a PO is kind of an assurance that payment is guaranteed. We can also do, we can mail them the PO or do a paperless PO where we give them the PO number. And once the PO is created, what we ask from you is to send us the invoice when you receive it so that we will pay off from the invoice. And this is again, when you don't want to be paying it upfront. So when you create a PO, a specific amount of money is set aside for recurring charges. This helps to encumber the recurring costs. And they can also be used to streamline the requisition process for vendor payments. It also helps you budget better. You can also use it if you have a monthly payment, when your group has a recurring expense every month, like phone bills, rent, utility bills. You can also create a PO for the entire year. We come to journal entries. They're used by a lot of groups who give out funds to other groups. So it's really used to transfer funds from one organization's associated student account to another's. When you are submitting a journal entry, it is very important you include the minutes where the transfer funds were approved, highlighting the appropriate sections. We don't just transfer funds without making sure they were approved in your minutes. Common reasons why requisition is held up. We either are missing the original receipts or invoices. The person who's signing the requisition is not a registered authorized signer. Again, you are not a registered authorized signer if you haven't put yourself on, entered your self on the authorized signer portal and mailed in the form with your original signature back. It also could be held up if there are no funds in your account, or if the expenditure breaks financial policy, or we're missing the meeting minutes, or we have questions. The description is inadequate. The totals are incorrect. The account name and number, we can look that up and correct it for you. But if it would help if that's correct, and I put a link where you can find your account name and number. Cindy, should I start with the budget process, or would you like to go with that?
You can go ahead.
Okay.
Since that's part of the your presentation, and I will go more into depth on just the budget and what it's made up of.
Great, thanks. So the budget process, in the winter quarter, all AS entities will receive a budget packet during the first week of winter quarter. And the budget hearings occur around the second week of February. Organizations will explain the budget changes or requests and answer any questions from the budget allocation committee. The allocations are not debated at the budget hearings. After the hearings, Finance and Business meets in closed session to formulate a budget recommendation to the AS president, the business committee, and all Senate members. During spring quarter, the AS president will prepare a draft budget presented to F&B by the second week of spring quarter. The preliminary budget will be forwarded to the Senate by the third week. And then the AS president will forward the final budget to the Senate the fourth week. If Senate does not approve the budget by the sixth week of spring quarter, then it will be assumed the AS president's budget will be the approved budget for the next fiscal year. And that sums up my presentation. Does anybody have any questions for me?
I don't see any questions on my end, Anjum, that I Just saw a comment saying thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Anybody have any other questions for Anjan?
I don't have a question, but I thought I would just clarify something quickly. I'd heard the question before. And basically, if you're wondering what an itemized receipt is, we talk a lot about original itemized receipts. If you know, when you go to a restaurant or someplace, you get a receipt that is actually lists everything that was purchased, all the meals, every item. That's the itemized receipt. You can also just get the receipt, which shows your signature and just the amount. And that's not really acceptable because it really doesn't show what was purchased. So I thought I wanted to clarify that in case there was any confusion. And I guess we're ready now for the other section part of it, the budget, the AS's budget as it relates to the university. So associated students, as Anjum said, our budget is made up of student fees. All students pay a quarterly fee to associated students and we manage the funds. Associated students is not part of the general university accounting. We do have financial autonomy, which has been granted us by the chancellor, which is really great because these are fees from students coming to an association made up of students so that students can manage their own funds. Okay, so Anjum went over some of it, how much is paid each quarter, but there's definitely different parts of the AS budget. As most of you know, the AS budget is made up of lock-in fees. These fees are determined in student elections. So all students, whoever is part of the student body, each spring when we have the elections gets to vote on any new fees that might be introduced that students would have to pay. Also, all fees are reaffirmed every 2 years. So every fee, I think we have like 29 different lock-ins, which is more than I believe any other UC. They get to vote on whether to continue that lock-in fee. We have always been lucky. All of our lock-ins have always been reaffirmed. But every year before the spring elections, we try to do an informational campaign just to let students know what these lock-in fees do for them. You know, why should they vote for a lock-in for a program board or for KCSB or some of these others? And so to get that information out is important so students see the value in what their student fees are paying for. Okay, so Associated Students has a total of about a $15 million budget with all the fees that come in. There are different parts of the budget. There's one portion of lock-in fees that are called university designated. These are fees, let me see how many there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 11 different fees. These fees go to like arts and lectures, CLAS, the Multicultural Center, Office of Student Life, Rec Sports, Student Health, the University Center are some examples. These fees are part of the AS budget because the fee was passed in the AS election. However, these funds do not come directly to AS. These funds go directly to those different departments. So we never really see the funds. And the total of all the university designated is about $5 million. It's about a third of our budget. The oversight that we have for these different departments spending student fees is that each one of these departments is required to send an annual report to our executive director. This report just explains what they've spent the funds on, because when the original lock-in fee was passed, there was a description on the ballot of what the funds were supposed to be paid for. So this is the oversight that our organization has to make sure that they actually are spending your fees on what they are supposed to. The other portions of the budget, we have the AS designated. Now these are I think there's like 29 different lock-in fees, everything from the bike shop, the food bank, SCORE, Trans and Queer Commission, Take Back the Night, Department of Public Works, Program Board. These are all the actual lock-in fees. And each one of these fees has a designated amount that is paid to us when the students pay their fees. For example, Food Bank receives $3.48 per student per quarter, fall, winter, and spring. And I believe their lock-in fee is the same in the summer. So each one of those 29 lock-ins has a specific amount. And part of what Angela and I do is we make sure that when all the fees are paid to AS, that the exact amount for each different type of lock-in is put into a special account, and to make sure that these fees are appropriately designated to the correct funds, because these funds are restricted to those specific things that the ballot language said that it would be used for when these lock-ins were passed. There is another section of Associated Students' budget that's called undesignated. This includes one fee of around $45 that is paid to us to students, and it's not designated to be put into any specific thing. This money is what is used to allocate funds to all of the boards and committees for staff salaries, everything else within our organization that is not funded by a lock-in fee. And this is quite a bit. It's a total of about a little bit under, it's about $2 million, but we do also have some interest that we get from our fees in interest-bearing accounts. We do have some capital reserves and dividends that also is added to this. And we also have what's called the suspense account. The suspense account is made up of all the funds that are not spent in a year. If it's not rolled over to the next fiscal year, funds that are just not spent from an organization will be put into what's called suspense, and it will be rolled back into the budget allocations for the next year that is budgeted out. So the undesignated portion has to pay for administration, has to pay for all of our departments. It pays for creative media, and it pays for all of the accounts, again, that don't have lock-in fees. All of the execs have accounts, the elections, Global Gaucho, Food Security Committee, Student Advocate, Transfer Student Alliance are some examples of these groups that do not have a lock-in fee. And as Angela was saying, during the budget process, she explained how that happened. So next winter, Finance and Business Committee and the Senate will be responsible for creating the budget for the next fiscal year that starts in July 1st of 2022. And as she said, everybody will turn in their request. They'll do a budget hearing, and then Finance and Business gets to decide how to allocate those, what the funds that we have allocate to all the different requests that have been made. Okay. So there is one thing happening this year. I thought I should mention it. When the Students Initiative was passed way back in 2006, there included a cost of living adjustment that was to happen every 5 years. In 2012, we had a small increase. In 2017, and again in the fall of 2022, there will be a slight increase that is based on the average of the CPI of the last 5 years. And this increase will be effective in the fall of 2022. So this year, when we send out the budget packets, Angela and I are going to figure out what the CPI is. We are going to add those increases into the lock-ins who get the increases. Now, not every lock-in will get a cost of living adjustment, just those lock-ins that were part of the Students Initiative. It was a total of $100 increase, and it includes portions of some of the fees. So a lot of the fees said we want to double our fee. So it's only that portion that was increased in that election that is actually subject to the cost of living adjustment. So that's just a heads up. Some of the lock-in amounts will change slightly. It's usually not a huge amount, but really what it's supposed to do is keep pace with inflation. Okay. So I will mention some of our lock-in fees. There are a few of them that we actually get the funds for, and they're called pass-throughs. It passes through Associated Students, and we send it directly on to a different entity, such as the Daily Nexus. The fee for the Daily Nexus is collected. We do get the money in our accounts, and then we write a check over to the Daily Nexus so that they can get their fees. Also parking. There is a lock-in fee for night and weekend parking. It's $3.33 per student, fall, winter, spring, and summer. That fee is collected by associated students. We also take a 10% recharge on that fee, and then we pass it on to parking. What we do with that 10% recharge is we keep it in a fund. And right now that fund is actually being spent on the disability transportation program, because that was approved for those funds to be spent on. Any other transportation related expense, this fund can be used for with the proper approvals. Another one of those lock-in fees is UCSA, the University of California Student Association. We have a lock-in that says so much of our fees will go to that organization. And when we collect it, we then send it on to that organization. Okay, one thing I have not mentioned yet is we are paid by every student that pays fees for each quarter and in the summer. But we don't know exactly how many students are actually going to pay the fees and attend. So we have to base our budget on a certain number of students. Right now, we base our budget on 19,500 students for fall, winter, and spring. And then it's 7,775 in the summer. As you know, there are more than that students who actually pay. So that's what we base our budget on and have our figures based on. However, let's say in fall quarter, there's 22,000 students that pay fees. Angela and I keep track of that. We actually see the money coming in and we request it from the university. And in that case, there would be 2,500 students who paid that we haven't really accounted for in our budget. At that point, that's called over-enrollment. Angela and I figure that out after everybody has paid for that quarter, and then we ask for the funds from the university. So all lock-in fees, when they see their financial report, they see the published budget on how much we've based the budget on. And then there's also some categories that include the summer over-enrollment, if they have summer fees, fall, winter, and spring over-enrollment. So that's additional funds that will be added to your budget throughout the year, because we don't exactly know how much it's going to be until after everybody has paid for that quarter. We have increased that amount. For a couple of years, we were increasing it every year as the number of registered students kept going up. We haven't done it now for a while. We have to be very careful. There's always fall quarter, there's always a lot of students. And then by spring, there's usually less students attending. So we don't want to base our budget on an amount that maybe in spring quarter, there won't be that many students. So we do have to be a little bit conservative on how many students we think are going to attend. Throughout the last couple of years, it's been a little tricky. We weren't sure quite how the pandemic would affect our enrollment. Looking over the last year, it looks like the enrollment has been very steady. In fact, it has looked high. This last summer looked pretty high too. A lot of students are attending the university and attending classes. So it's looking really healthy. A lot of times things will happen in the world or in the country or in the state that we think may affect the enrollment. So that's another reason to just be cautious and not try to raise the amount of students we project our budget on too high. So that's most of what I have. Is there any questions about the AS budget or anything that you'd like to know that I may have left out? One other thing, if you want to see all the AS budgets, there is on the AS website, if you go to the Finance and Business Committee website, there is a section under transparency where you can see this year's budget is posted as well as budgets from the previous years. Under that website is also a section that shows expenses. And you can go and check all the lock-ins as well as all the boards and committees. And you can look from year to year and see how much money was in their budget, how much, if they got any kind of an income, and then how much money was spent. And Judy Ann Dutcher, our web developer, has made little pie charts. I give her the numbers and she makes little pie charts. So you can kind of see a visual of what has been spent from year to year by the different boards and committees and the lock-ins. Are there any other questions, comments? Okay, I don't see any at this point. So thank you. If you ever do have questions on the AS budget, or if you need information on particular committees that you sit on, feel free to ask for information. We do have a fairly robust financial system, and we can produce whatever information that you request.
Thank you so much, Cindy and Anjum, for presenting today. And thank you everyone for your participation and for your questions. I just want to give one more last call for any questions, because we do have next on our schedule to take a 15-minute break. So are there any questions for myself, Cindy, Anjum? I see, B, that you have joined us. Is there anything that you want to add or share before we go and take our break?
Hi, Holly. Thank you so much. I don't have too much to add except for the statement that I wasn't able to read at the beginning. First, I want to thank you, Anjum and Cindy, for coming. And I also want to say to all the participants left in the room that on behalf of the AS President, EVPLA, and Student Advocate General, we thank you all for coming to this training. The following curriculum supported our vision for the 2021-2022 academic year and the knowledge we find essential for the association as we start fall quarter. Please note that this training is a portion of the information you will be required to learn as per legal code. Please, thank you for taking the time to be an active participant and engaging with the facilitators and your fellow peers in receiving this knowledge. We look forward to serving you. Thank you, Holly. I'll pass back to you.
Thanks so much, B. And with that, we're going to transition into our break.